26. Never before had they been at enmity for a whole day. This was the first time it had been so, and this was not even a quarrel. It was an evident acknowledgement of complete estrangement. How could he look at her as he had looked when he came into the room for the certificate? Look at her, see that her heart was torn by despair, and go out in silence with that calmly indifferent look? Not only had he cooled toward her, but he hated her because he loved another woman. That was clear. And recalling all the cruel words he had uttered, Anna invented other words which he evidently had wished to say and could have said to her, and she grew more and more exasperated. "I do not hold you," he might have said. "You may go where you please. You probably didn't wish to be divorced from your husband so that you could go back to him. Go back. If you need money, I will give you some. How many rubles do you want?" All the cruelest words that a coarse man could say, he, in her imagination, said to her, and she did not forgive him for them any more than if he had really said them. And was it not last night that he, an honourable and truthful man, swore he loved me? Have I not often before despaired needlessly? She said to herself immediately after. All that day, except when she went to the Wilsons, which took her about 2 hours, Anna passed in doubting whether all was over or whether there was still hope of a reconciliation, and whether she ought to leave at once or to see him again. She waited for him all day, and in the evening when she went to her room, having left word for him that she had a headache, she thought, "If he comes in spite of the maid's message, it means that he still loves me. If not, it means that all is over, and then I will decide what I am to do." At night she heard his carriage stop, heard him ring, heard his steps, and his voice talking to the maid. He believed what he was told, did not want to learn more, and went to his room. So all was over. And death, as the sole means of reviving love for herself in his heart, of punishing him, and of gaining the victory in that contest which an evil spirit in her heart was waging against him, presented itself clearly and vividly to her. Now it was all the same whether they went to Vozdevichenko or not, whether she got a divorce or not. It was all useless. All she wanted was to punish him. When she poured out her usual dose of opium, and thought that she need only drink the whole phial in order to die, it seemed to her so easy and simple that she again began thinking with pleasure of how he would suffer, repent, and love her memory when it was too late. She lay in bed with open eyes, looking at the stucco cornice under the ceiling by the light of a single burnt-down candle, and at the shadow of the screen which fell on it, and she vividly imagined what he would feel when she was no more, when she was for him nothing but a memory. "How could I say those cruel words to her?" he would say. "How could I leave the room without saying anything? But now she is no more. She is gone from us forever. She is there." Suddenly the shadow of the screen began to move, and spread over the whole of the cornice, the whole ceiling. Other shadows rushed toward it from another side. For an instant they rushed together, but then again they spread with renewed swiftness, flickered, and all was darkness. "Death," she thought. And such terror came upon her that it was long before she could realize where she was, and with trembling hand could find the matches to light another candle in the place of the one that had burned down and gone out. No, anything, only to live. Why, I love him, and he loves me. All this has been but will pass, she said, feeling that tears of joy at this return to life were running down her cheeks. And, to escape from her fears, she hastily went to him in his study. He was sleeping in the study and was sound asleep. She came up, and holding the light above him, looked at him long. Now, when he was asleep, she loved him so that she could not restrain tears of tenderness while looking at him. But she knew that if he were to wake, he would look at her with a cold expression, conscious of his own integrity, and that before telling him of her love, she must prove to him that he was to blame toward her. Without waking him, she returned to her room, and after a second dose of opium, toward morning, she fell into a heavy but troubled sleep, without ever ceasing to be conscious of herself, In the morning, a terrible nightmare, which had come to her several times even before her union with Vronsky, repeated itself and woke her. An old man with a tangled beard was leaning over some iron and doing something, while muttering senseless words in French. And as always in that nightmare, this was what made it terrible. She felt this peasant was paying no attention to her, but was doing something dreadful to her with the iron. And she awoke in a cold perspiration. When she got up, the previous day appeared in her memory as in a fog. There had been a quarrel. It was what had happened several times before. I said I had a headache, and he did not come to see me. Tomorrow we shall leave. I must see him and get ready for the move, she thought. And hearing that he was in the study, she went to him. As she passed through the drawing room, she heard a vehicle stop at the front door, and, looking out of the window, she saw a young girl in a lilac hat leaning out of the carriage window and giving an order to the footman who was ringing at the front door. After some talking in the hall, someone came upstairs, and she heard Vronsky's step outside the drawing room. He was going quickly downstairs. Again Anna went to the window. There he was on the steps, without a hat, going down to the carriage. The young girl in the lilac hat handed him a parcel. Vronsky said something to her and smiled. The carriage rolled away. He ran rapidly upstairs again. The fog that had obscured everything within her was suddenly dissipated. Yesterday's feelings wrung her aching heart with fresh pain. She could not now understand how she could have humiliated herself so as to remain a whole day with him in his house. She went to his study to announce to him her decision. It was the Princess Sorokina with her daughter who came to bring me the money and documents from Mamma. I could not get them yesterday. How is your head? Better? He said quietly, not wishing to see or understand the gloomy and solemn look on her face. She stood silent in the middle of the room, looking at him intently. He glanced at her, frowned for an instant, and continued to read her letter. She turned and slowly moved from the room. He could still call her back, but she reached the door and he remained silent, and only the rustle of the paper, as he turned a page, was heard. "Oh, by the way," he said, when she was already in the doorway, "we're definitely going tomorrow, aren't we?" "You, but not I," she said, turning round toward him. "Anna, it is impossible to live like this. You, but not I," she repeated. "This is becoming intolerable." You will repent of this," she said, and left him. Alarmed by the despairing look with which she had said these words, he jumped up, intending to run after her, but, recollecting himself, he sat down again, tightly clenching his teeth and frowning. This, as it seemed to him, unbecoming and indefinite threat irritated him. "I've tried everything," he thought. "The only thing left is to pay no attention." And he began getting ready to drive to town, and to go again to his mother's, to obtain her signature to a power of attorney. She heard the sound of his steps in the study and dining room. He paused at the drawing-room door, but he did not return to her. He only gave an order that they should let Voitov have the horse in his absence. Then she heard the carriage drive up, and the door open, and he went out again. But now he re-entered the hall, and someone ran upstairs. It was his valet, who had come for the gloves his master had forgotten. She went back to the window and saw him take the gloves without looking, and, having touched the coachman's back with his hand, say something to him. Then, without turning to look up at the window, he sat down in the carriage in his usual posture, crossing one leg over the other, and, putting on a glove, disappeared round the corner. 27. Gone. Is it finished? Said Anna to herself as she stood by the window. And in answer to that question, the impressions left by the darkness when her candle went out and by the terrible dream, merging into one, filled her heart with icy horror. "No, it is impossible," she exclaimed, and, crossing the room, she rang loudly. She was so terrified of being alone that she did not wait for the servant, but went out to meet him. "Find out where the Count has gone," she said. The man replied that the Count had gone to the stables. "The Count told me to let you know that, in case you should wish to go out, the carriage will return very soon." "Very well. Wait a moment. I will just write a note. Send Michael with it to the stables at once. Quickly." She sat down and wrote, "I was to blame. Come home. We must talk it over. For God's sake, come. I am frightened." She stuck it down and gave it to the man. Then, afraid to remain alone now, she followed him out of the room and went to the nursery. "How's this? That's not it. This is not he. Where are his blue eyes and his sweet timid smile?" was her first thought on seeing her plump, rosy little girl with curly black hair, instead of Sereja, whom, in the disorder of her mind, she had expected to find in the nursery. The little girl, sitting at the table, persistently and firmly hammered on it with the stopper of a bottle, gazing blankly at her mother with her two black currants of eyes. Having, in answer to the questions of the English nurse, said that she was quite well and that they were going to the country next day, Anna sat down beside the child and began twirling the stopper round in front of her. But the child's loud ringing laughter and a movement of her eyebrows reminded Anna so vividly of Vronsky that, repressing her sobs, she rose hurriedly and left the room. Is it really all over? No, it cannot be, she thought. He will come back. But how will he explain to me that smile, and his animation after he had spoken to her? But even if he does not explain it, I will believe him all the same. If I don't believe him, there is only one way left for me. And I don't want that. She looked at the clock. 12 minutes had passed. Now he has received my note and is on his way back. It won't be long, another 10 minutes. But supposing he does not come? No, that's impossible. He must not find me with the red eyes. I'll go and wash them. Oh, and did I brush my hair or not? She asked herself, but could not remember. She felt her head with her hand. Yes, my hair was done, but I don't in the least remember when. She did not even trust her hand, and went up to the mirror to see whether her hair really was done or not. It was, but she could not remember doing it. Who was that? She thought, gazing in the mirror at the feverish, frightened face with the strangely brilliant eyes looking at her. Yes, that is I, she suddenly realized, and looking at her whole figure, she suddenly felt his kisses, shuddered, and moved her shoulders. Then she raised her hand to her lips and kissed it. What is it? Am I going mad? And she went to her bedroom, where Anushka was tidying up. Anushka, she said, stopping before the maid and looking at her, without knowing what she would say to her. You wish to go to see the Princess Oblonskaya, said the maid, apparently understanding her. Darya Alexandrovna? Yes, I will go. A quarter of an hour there, a quarter of an hour back. He's already on the way. He will be here in a minute. She looked at her watch. But how could he go away, leaving me in this condition? How can he go on living without having made it up with me? She went to the window and looked out into the street. He might have got back by this time. But her calculations might be incorrect, and again she began trying to remember when he had left, and reckoning the minutes. Just as she was going to compare her watch with the large clock, someone drove up. Glancing out of the window, she saw his calash. But no one came upstairs, and she heard voices below. Her messenger had returned in the carriage. She went down to him. I did not find the Count. He had gone to the Nizhny railway station, he said. What do you want? What is this? She asked the rosy, jolly-looking Michael, as he handed her back her note. Oh, of course, he did not receive it, she remembered. Go with this note to the Countess Vronskaya's country house. Do you know it? And bring back an answer at once, she told the man. But what shall I do myself? She thought. Yes, I will go to Dolly's, of course, or else she shall go out of my mind. And I can telegraph as well. And she wrote out a telegram. I must speak to you. Come at once. Having sent off the telegram, she went to dress. Ready dressed and with her bonnet on, she again looked at Anushka's placid and now still rounder face. Evident compassion showed plainly in those kindly little grey eyes. Anushka, my dear, what am I to do? Muttered Anna, sobbing, as she sank helplessly into an armchair. Why take it so to heart, Anna Arkadyevna? Such things will happen. Go out and get it off your mind, advised the maid. Yes, I will go, said Anna, recovering and rousing herself. And if a telegram comes during my absence, send it to Darya Alexandrovna's. No, I'll come back myself. But I must not think. I must do something. Go away. Get out of this house at any rate, she said to herself, listening with horror to the terrible beating of her heart, and she hurriedly went out and got into the calash. Where to, ma'am? Asked Peter, before getting on to the box. To the Oblonskis', on the Znamenka. 28. The weather was bright. All the morning there had been a fine drizzling rain, but it had now just cleared up. The iron roofs, the pavement flagstones, the cobbles of the road, the wheels, the leather, brass and tin of the carriages, all shone brightly in the May sunshine. It was 3 o'clock, the busiest time in the streets. Sitting in the corner of the comfortable calash, which rocked gently on its elastic springs to the rapid trot of the pair of greys, Anna, amid the incessant rattle of wheels and the rapidly changing impressions in the open air, again going over the events of the last days, saw her position quite differently from what it had seemed at home. Now the idea of death no longer seemed so terrible and clear, and death itself no longer seemed inevitable. She reproached herself now with the humiliation to which she had descended. I entreated him to forgive me. I have surrendered to him. I have confessed that I am to blame. Why? Can I not live without him? She began reading the signboards. Office and stores. Dental surgeon. Yes, I will tell Dolly everything. She's not fond of Vronsky. It will be humiliating and painful, but I will tell her everything. She's fond of me, and I will follow her advice. I won't submit to him. I won't let him educate me. Filipov, bakery. It is said that they send dough to Petersburg. The Moscow water is so good. Oh, and the wells in Mytishi, and the pancakes. And she remembered how, long, long ago, when she was only 17, she visited the Troitsa monastery with her aunt. We drove with horses, for there was no railway. Can it really have been I, that girl with the red hands? How many things that then seemed to me excellent and unattainable have since become insignificant, and things that then existed are now forever unattainable. Should I then have believed that I should descend to such humiliation? How proud and satisfied he will be to get my note. But I will show him. How nasty that paint smells. Why are they always painting and building? Dressmaking and millinery, she read. A man bowed to her. It was Anushka's husband. Our parasite, she remembered how Vronsky had said the words. Our? Why our? It is dreadful that one cannot tear out the past by the roots. We cannot tear it out, but we can hide the memory of it. And I will hide it. At this point, she recollected her past with Karenina, and how she had effaced the memory of him. Dolly will think I'm leaving a second husband, and that I am therefore certainly unjustifiable. Do I want to be justified? I can't, she said to herself, and wished to cry. But she immediately began to wonder what those two young girls could be smiling at. Love, probably. They don't know how far from joyous it is, how low. The boulevard and children. 3 boys running about playing at horses. Surecha. And I shall lose everything and shan't get him back. Yes, I shall lose everything if he does not return. He may have missed the train and be back already. Wanting to humiliate herself again, she said to herself, No, I shall go to Dolly's and will tell her frankly. I am unhappy. I deserve it. I am guilty, but all the same I am unhappy. Help me. These horses, this carriage, how horrid it is of me to be in this carriage. They are all his, but I shall not see them any more. Is anyone here? She asked in the anteroom. Catherine Alexandrovna Levina, answered the footman. Kitty! That same Kitty with whom Vronsky was in love, thought Anna. She whom he remembered affectionately. He regrets not having married her, and of me he thinks with hate and regrets having joined himself to me. When Anna arrived, the two sisters were consulting about feeding the baby. Dolly went out alone to meet the visitor, who at that moment had come to interrupt their talk. So you have not left yet? I was myself coming to see you, said Dolly. I had a letter from Stiva today. We also had a telegram from him, replied Anna, looking round for Kitty. He writes that he cannot understand what Alexis Alexandrovitch really wants, but that he won't leave without getting an answer. I thought you had a visitor. May I see the letter? Yes, Kitty, answered Dolly with embarrassment. She's in the nursery. She has been very ill. I heard about it. May I see the letter? I will fetch it at once. But he has not refused. On the contrary, Stiva is hopeful, added Dolly, pausing at the door. I have no hope, and don't even desire it, said Anna. What does it mean? Kitty considers it humiliating to meet me, thought Anna when she was left alone. Maybe she is right, but it is not for her, who was in love with Vronsky. It is not for her to let me feel it, even if it is true. I know that no respectable woman can receive me in my position. I knew that from the first moment I sacrificed everything for him. And this is the reward. Ah, how I hate him. And why have I come here? It is still worse for me. It is harder than ever. She heard the voices of the sisters conferring together in the next room. And what am I going to tell Dolly now? Console Kitty by letting her see that I am unhappy and letting her patronize me? No, and even Dolly would not understand. It is no use speaking to her. But it would be interesting to see Kitty and show her how I despise everybody and everything, how indifferent everything is to me. Dolly came back with the letter. Anna read and silently returned it. I knew it all, she said, and it does not interest me in the least. But why? I, on the contrary, am hopeful, said Dolly, looking at Anna with curiosity. She had never seen her in such a strange and irritable mood. When are you leaving? She asked. Anna, screwing up her eyes, gazed straight before her without answering. Is Kitty hiding from me, then? She asked, looking toward the door and blushing. Ah, what nonsense! She's nursing her baby and has difficulty with it, and I was advising her. She is very pleased. She will come directly, Dolly said awkwardly, not knowing how to tell an untruth. Ah, here she is. When she heard that Anna had come, Kitty did not wish to appear. But Dolly persuaded her. Having mustered up her courage, Kitty came in, and, blushing, went up to Anna and held out her hand. I am very pleased, she began in a trembling voice. Kitty was confused by the struggle within her between hostility toward this bad woman and a desire to be tolerant to her. But as soon as she saw Anna's lovely and attractive face, all the hostility vanished at once. I shouldn't have been surprised if you had not wanted to see me. I've got used to everything. You've been ill? Yes, you are changed, said Anna. Kitty felt that Anna looked at her with animosity. She attributed the animosity to the awkward position Anna, who had formerly patronized her, now felt herself to be in, and she was sorry for her. They talked about Kitty's illness, about the baby, and about Stiva. but evidently nothing interested Anna. "I came to say goodbye to you," she said, rising. "When are you leaving?" But Anna again, without replying, turned to Kitty. "Yes, I'm very glad to have seen you," she said with a smile. "I've heard so much about you from everybody, and even from your husband. He called on me and I liked him very much," she added, with obvious ill intent. "Where is he?" "He has gone to the country," answered Kitty, blushing. "Remember me to him. Be sure you do." "I will be sure to," repeated Kitty naively, looking compassionately into her eyes. "Well then, goodbye, Dolly." And kissing Dolly and pressing Kitty's hand, Anna hurried away. "She's still the same and as attractive as ever. Charming," said Kitty, when she was once more alone with her sister. "But there is something pathetic about her. Terribly pathetic." "Yes, but today there is something peculiar about her," said Dolly. "When I was seeing her out, there in the ante-room, I thought she was going to cry."